Noah smiled at Tate, finally understanding that all of his childhood dreams of one day becoming Mrs. Tate Blue were truly over. In reality, they had been over since his time at Brown, when he'd finally accepted that Tate would never love him the way he'd always hoped. Still, there was a difference between quietly knowing something and hearing the object of your affection confirm it so completely while standing right in front of you. Surprisingly, it didn't hurt the way Noah had once imagined it would. He had Riley now, and Riley was everything he had ever needed. Riley was steady, devoted, and willing to do whatever it took to be the partner Noah deserved. Most importantly, Riley loved Noah in a way Tate never could. And that was okay. One of the hardest lessons of growing up was realizing that loving someone never guaranteed they would love you back. Feelings couldn't be earned, forced, or willed into existence. Sometimes the greatest act of love was accepting that another person's heart belonged somewhere else and allowing your own to find the place where it was truly wanted. Noah had finally done that, and for the first time since he was 8 years old he felt completely at peace. Tate stepped forward and wrapped Noah in a tight hug. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I'm sorry I can't love you the way you needed me to. I wish I could have given you what you were looking for, but I can't." He pulled back just enough to meet Noah's eyes, a small smile forming on his face. "But I'm really glad you found someone who treats you right, someone who loves you the way you deserve to be loved. Riley can give you something I never could." Tate gave Noah a gentle squeeze on the shoulder. "I love you, Noah, I always will. But I love you like the kid who grew up beside me, like my best friend, like family. That kind of love isn't less than romantic love, it's just different. The love you share with Riley is the kind of love you're meant to build a life with. Mine is the kind that will always be cheering you on, no matter where life takes us." Noah smiled through the emotion, finally understanding that not every love story was meant to become a romance. Some were meant to become something just as lasting, a lifelong friendship built on honesty, acceptance, and letting each other go without ever letting go of the care they had for one another. "I still care about you," I said, "as my buddy, as someone who mattered and still matters." Noah gave a small, genuine smile. "That I can live with," he said, "as long as it's real." "It is," I said. And for the first time, the truth didn't feel like a rejection. It felt like a boundary that finally let both of us breathe. I laughed quietly to myself. "It's funny," I said, shaking my head. "The body that kept me warm at night all those years was a gay boy." Noah looked at me, raising an eyebrow. I continued, a wry smile tugging at my lips. "Here I am, a homophobe, scared of what I didn't understand, loving my gay friend without ever really realizing it." Noah let out a small laugh, half incredulous, half resigned. "You really do have a talent for irony," he said. "Irony?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, a small smirk forming. "You spent decades trying to push me away while also depending on me, and somehow, we survived it." I leaned back, letting the tension of years wash out of me in a sigh. "We survived," I said, "but I think I learned more than anyone imagined." Noah nodded. "Survived and maybe even closer for it," he said softly. I laughed again, quieter this time. The thought that I had clung to someone I didn't understand and that he had stayed was ridiculous, painful, and beautiful all at once. For the first time, the absurdity didn't sting. It made me appreciate him even more. Noah went still when I said his name. "There's one more thing I need to say," I told him, my voice steady now. "Before, we never talked about your unrequited feelings again." He nodded once, bracing himself. "I never fucked Wayne," I said. "I never loved him, I never even liked him." The tension drained from Noah's shoulders so fast it startled me. He looked down, then covered his face with one hand, breathing out hard. "I needed to hear that," Noah admitted. "I hated myself for caring that much. I was wondering if I was stupid for feeling jealous of someone I despised." "You weren't stupid," I said. "He scared me, he controlled me, but he never had that part of me, not even close. Not a single part of my heart has anything like Wayne in there taking up room where you are." Noah dropped his hand and met my eyes. "I told myself it didn't matter," he said, "that whatever you did with him wasn't my business, but it still ate at me." "I know," I said, "and I hate that you carried that alone." Silence settled, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It felt like something was finally put back where it belonged. "Okay," Noah said after a moment, "then we're done with it." "Done," I agreed. "Do you want Mark?" Noah gave a small, tired smile. "No, he's only a friend and gay mentor. After you hurt me with Tina at Brown, I lost my virginity to Mark consensually at his apartment. I wanted to hurt you back for how thoughtless and childish you behaved. I love Mark Tate, but it's not romantic or sexual. He's like an older brother or a mentor I respect and trust. There's never been any dreams or hope of Mark and me sharing a life. I let you believe my heart belonged to Mark in my 20s to gain a little control over our relationship and hold a bit of agency over my life choices. Thank you for telling me about your negative feelings for Wayne, not because it changes the past, but because it lets me stop imagining things that were never real. I nodded. That's all I wanted to know. We didn't reach for each other, we didn't need to. Some truths don't pull people closer, they let them finally stand without leaning. And for the first time, it felt like we could move forward without ghosts following every step. Now that I know about your feelings, Noah, I'm so sorry my blindness hurt or isolated you from the rest of society. I know what it feels like to love the wrong person. You and I deserve someone who loves us back in the same way we love them. Don't waste another second, Noah, pinning for me when it won't result in the ending you deserve. Noah's eyes shone already glassy, but he nodded. I wasn't lying as a teen when I admitted I was platonically in love with you, Noah. Even though I've never had romantic feelings for you, I continued. It kind of sucks that I don't. I must be an idiot or something's wrong with me if I'm not in love with the cutest, sweetest blonde man in Lowe's Angels, Tate laughed, tickling Noah. A tear slipped free from Noah's eyes despite his effort to hold it back. So you left the house because of your feelings when we were 18, Tate asked quietly. Noah shook his head. No, he admitted, not because of my feelings. Tate frowned. Then why? Noah let out a slow breath, because I saw you and Emily having sex in your bedroom. The words hung in the air. It destroyed me, Noah continued. In that moment I realized we were never going to happen. You were in love with someone else and I couldn't keep pretending I was okay. I had to leave before staying there broke me completely, or before I finally told you the truth. He looked down, guilt washing over him. I should have told you back then, Tate. I'm sorry, I just didn't have the backbone to say it out loud. I was terrified that if you knew how I felt, I'd lose you entirely, so I ran instead. Noah looked down, breathing carefully, like he was keeping himself steady piece by piece. I had many lovers since I was a teen, Noah, but they were never a threat to what we had, and our bed was never shared with a third party. I'd never disrespect you that way by fucking girls in our bed. The only time I carelessly fucked someone in my room before Brown was Emily, because the other rooms in the house were filled with storage, and you had the only spare room with Tiffany. I regret that fuck if it hurts you because no orgasm is worth seeing you cry, Noah. I never wanted you living in the space of maybe, I said, or thinking you missed something that was never there. He wiped his face, nodding. I think part of me already knew, he admitted. Did you love anyone you fucked? I just needed to hear it from you. I did once when I was much younger in the 1970s. I'm sorry for the pain, I said. Not for the truth, but for how long it took me to say it cleanly. Noah took a breath, then another. Tate had loved someone and had been in a relationship with them. Tate being in love was agonizing to the blonde, but the truth was better than wasting more time hopping for a miracle. Tate looked at Noah for a long moment before speaking. Just because I was in love with someone, Noah, doesn't mean it was good or healthy, and it didn't last. He held Noah's gaze. When it came down to it, I chose you, not as a romantic partner but as the person I couldn't imagine losing. Romantic love can be powerful, but it's also fragile. Sometimes it's fleeting. What you and I have has always been different. A faint smile crossed his face. Our friendship, our history, the way we've always been there for each other, that's brought me more fulfillment than any romance ever could. I know that's not the love you wanted from me, and I'm sorry for that. But the love I do have for you is real. It's the kind that lasts a lifetime, even if it isn't romantic. Noah nodded. Tate took a slow breath before speaking, his eyes never leaving Noah's. Noah, regardless of whether it's romantic love or platonic love, you've always been the person I've loved most. More than anyone I've ever dated. More than anyone I've ever shared my bed with, more than any partner who's ever come into my life. Noah's lips parted slightly. He searched Tate's face, trying to decide whether he'd heard him correctly. Tate continued. What you gave me all those years growing up, every late-night conversation in our room, every laugh, every stupid adventure, every time you stood beside me, that was worth more than everything I ever got from my romantic relationships combined. Looking back, so many of those relationships gave me excitement for a while but very little that truly lasted. Noah felt a lump rise in his throat, his eyes shimmered as he struggled to hold back tears. When it came down to it, Tate said softly, if someone ever asked me to choose between keeping you in my life or staying with the person I was in love with, I'd choose you every single time, without hesitation. Noah blinked, a tear finally slipping down his cheek. You would have chosen me. Tate nodded. Every time, not because I wanted to marry you or because my love for you was romantic. It wasn't, but because you're my person differently, your family, you're the one who's been there through every stage of my life. Losing a romance would hurt, losing you would leave a hole that nothing else could fill. Noah wiped at his eyes and laughed softly through the tears. I spent 18 years wishing you'd say you loved me, he admitted. I never imagined you'd tell me something like this instead. Tate smiled warmly. I know it isn't the answer your younger self dreamed about. No, Noah replied, returning the smile, it isn't. He glanced down for a moment before looking back up. But my younger self didn't know Riley. He didn't know that there are different kinds of love and that not every great love story has to become a romance. Tate pulled Noah into another hug. I'm proud of the man you became. Noah hugged him back just as tightly. And I'm finally happy with the life I have. Riley is the love of my life. What you and I have, it's different, it's forever in its own way. Tate smiled. Exactly. Tate looked at Noah with an expression that was equal parts fierce and vulnerable. When I die, Noah, he said quietly, I want to be buried beside you if it's what you want too. Noah stared at him in stunned silence. I don't care what society thinks, Tate continued. I don't care if people misunderstand it. I don't care what names they call me. You're my buddy, you're my family. Wherever Noah Lunas is, that's where Tate Blue belongs. Noah's eyes filled with tears. Tate. I'm serious, Tate said. If our partners, our families, or anyone else has a problem with that, they can get fucked. They don't get to define what our relationship means. They don't get to tell us that a lifelong bond is somehow less important because it isn't romantic. A tear rolled down Noah's cheek as he let out a shaky laugh. You really mean that? Tate nodded without hesitation. I do. The love I have for you isn't the love of a husband or a boyfriend. It's the love of the person who's been beside me for most of my life. That's never going away. I want the world to know that when people look at our graves someday, that two childhood companions loved each other enough to stay side by side, even after death. Noah smiled through his tears. I'd like that, he whispered. I think I'd like that very much. Without another word, the two men embraced, holding on to a relationship that had survived childhood, heartbreak, distance, and time, one that neither of them ever intended to leave behind. I love you so much, Tate said, leaning forward to kiss Noah gently on the cheek. He rested his forehead against Noah's for a moment before letting out a quiet laugh. I just hope you never find out exactly how much. Noah smiled through damp eyes. I think I already know. Tate shook his head. No, you know I love you, but I don't think you'll ever understand how much you've shaped my life. You've been my constant since we were kids. I wouldn't be the man I am without you. That's something I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful for. Noah's throat tightened as emotions swelled in his chest. He returned the embrace, knowing that, for the first time, there were no unspoken feelings left between them, only two lifelong buddies who loved each other deeply in different ways. Then this is where we let it rest, Noah said. No more guessing, no more hopping. Yes, I said, that's what I want too. We sat there in the quiet aftermath, not broken, not healed, but honest. And for the first time, the line between us wasn't blurry or cruel. It was clear. And sometimes, clarity is the most respectful thing you can give someone, even when it hurts. Because you love me, Tate explained. I don't think it's fair to you for us to sleep next to each other anymore. My comfort isn't more important, and if it causes you pain, I won't do it. Noah hesitated before asking, his voice barely steady. Did I know the person you loved when you were a kid? A tear slipped free, and he wiped it away quickly like he was annoyed at himself for letting it show. Yes, I said. I didn't dodge it. You did. He swallowed. Was it serious? It was for them, I replied. And it was toxic. It went on for years but wasn't healthy, and it wasn't something I'm proud of, but it was real for them. Noah nodded slowly, absorbing that. That explains a lot, he murmured. Why were you angry in your 20s? Why do you disappear sometimes emotionally? Was it a sexual or romantic relationship? Yeah, I said, both. I stayed longer than I should have. I mistook intensity for love and control for commitment. He looked at me then, eyes red but clear. I'm sorry you went through that. Thank you, I said, and I'm sorry you had to watch parts of it without knowing what you were seeing. We sat with the truth between us, no details, no defenses, just the shape of it. I needed to know, Noah said quietly, not because I wanted to compare myself, just so I could stop guessing. I get that, I said, there's nothing left to guess about now. I took Noah's fingers in my hand and kissed them. Noah's breath shook, but I looked him in the eye and told him another truth he needed to understand. I love you, Noah, but I don't want to define it. Things become cheap and forgettable the moment we label our love. It's not homosexual, gay, or common. I just know I love you. I could explain why I love you, but I won't, because I love you too much to hurt you. I may have used your free affection for me for a few years after we met, but once I got to know you, I stopped. I loved you and would do anything to convince you to stay. I wasn't jealous of other men's access to your body, but was worried about your safety. I didn't want to control, possess, or obsess about you. I wanted to protect and keep you safe, especially within the risky environment I was raised in. He took a steadying breath. Thank you, okay, he said, then we leave it there. Yeah, I agreed, we leave it there. It's not you, Noah. Me being incapable of loving you back is because I'm so fucked up. It wasn't closure wrapped in a bow, but it was honest, and for both of us that was finally enough to stand on. Noah's voice was quiet, cautious, as if he were walking a tightrope over old scars. Why did Wayne taunt you? He asked finally, looking at me with a mixture of curiosity and something heavier, pain maybe, or memory. I let out a slow breath. He doesn't understand me and loves to remind me of my faults and mistakes. Noah's lips pressed together, his eyes shining, but he didn't look away. I know, he said softly. I can't love you the way you want, I continued, keeping my voice steady. And I don't want you shrinking yourself to fit what I can give. You deserve someone who meets you fully, someone who chooses you without hesitation. He let out a small, breathy laugh. A cute guy, huh? Yeah, I smiled. A really cute one, someone who gives you everything I never could and doesn't make you wonder where you stand. He nodded, swallowing. I want that, he admitted. I think I'm finally ready to stop hopping for something else. I want that for you, I said, genuinely. There was a quiet understanding between us then, not loss exactly, not relief either, more like acceptance settling into place. Thank you for saying it kindly, Noah said, that matters. I nodded, you matter. And in that moment, it felt like we were letting go the right way, not erasing what we'd been, but honoring it enough to move forward without pretending. Noah didn't answer right away. He looked down at his hands, fingers laced together like he was deciding whether honesty was worth the risk. Yes, he said finally, you did. I'll love you the rest of my life, we'll be close. I'll take anything you'll give me, he cried, leaning into Tate's chest. The word landed heavier than anything else he'd said all night. I swallowed. Don't cry, I'm sorry, I said, and this time I didn't rush past it or soften it. I leaned in and pressed a brief, gentle kiss to his temple, nothing claimed, nothing taken, just remorse. I really am, I was an asshole. He closed his eyes for a second, breathing through it. It wasn't just that you didn't say anything, he added. It was that I felt, seen and unseen at the same time, as you knew, but chose not to protect me from hopping. That stung because it was true. I thought ignoring it would make it go away, I admitted. I thought saying nothing was kinder than opening a door I couldn't walk through. It wasn't, he said quietly, then after a pause, but I understand why you did it. I nodded, shame tight in my chest. Understanding doesn't erase it, I know. No, he agreed, but it helps me stop wondering if I imagined everything. I rested my forehead briefly against his, then pulled back, giving him space. You didn't imagine it, I said, and I should have handled it better, I should have been braver. Noah looked at me, eyes still wet but steady. Thank you for saying that, he said. That's the apology I needed, not the kiss, the ownership. I gave a small, rueful smile. Yeah, I deserved that. We sat there in the quiet that followed, not fixed, not absolved, but finally honest in a way we hadn't been before. And somehow, that honesty hurt less than the silence ever had. "Why were you jealous of my friends?" Noah asked. "You liked Susie but not the others, why?" I thought about that for a moment, longer than was comfortable. "Because Susie never threatened what we had," I said finally. "She saw you clearly, but she never tried to take your place in my life or pull you into a world I didn't understand." Noah frowned slightly. "And the others?" "The others felt like doors closing," I admitted. "Every new friend meant you needed me less, and instead of dealing with that honestly, I turned it into suspicion, irritation, jealousy." He nodded slowly. "You were afraid of being replaced." "Yeah," I said, "not romantically, just erased. I was used to being the constant. When that started to change, I didn't handle it well." "That explains why you were cold to some of them," Noah said. "You weren't judging them, you were protecting yourself." "I wish I'd realized that sooner," I said. "It wasn't fair to you or to them." Noah let out a quiet breath. "Susie made you feel safe," he said. "The others made you feel unnecessary." "That's exactly it," I replied. "And instead of admitting I was scared of losing my place in your life, I acted as if I disapproved." He looked at me for a long second, then nodded. "I can live with that explanation," he said. "It makes the past make more sense." "I'm trying to make sense of it too," I said, late but honestly. Noah gave a small, tired smile. "Late still counts." And for once, the jealousy we'd never named felt smaller, no longer a weapon, just a flaw finally understood. Noah's face tightened when I said it, like he'd braced for the truth before I finished speaking. "I used you," I said quietly. "When we met, I was so lonely, Noah. I did everything I could to make sure you wouldn't leave." He didn't interrupt me. "I bought things, I offered things, I pulled you into my life and made it comfortable, safe, so you'd stay," I continued. "Not because you owed me, but because I was terrified of being alone again." Noah swallowed. "I knew," he said softly. "That caught me off guard." "You did." "Not at first," he admitted. "At first it just felt like kindness, like someone choosing me, but in my mid-20s I figured it out, Tate. I could feel the fear underneath it, like if I ever stepped too far away, something would break." My chest tightened. "I never wanted to trap you." "I know," he said. "You weren't cruel, you were scared." "That doesn't make it okay," I said. "I should have trusted you to stay without trying to buy certainty." Noah nodded. "It hurt sometimes," he admitted, "because I couldn't tell where generosity ended and obligation began. I worried that if I disappointed you, I'd lose everything." "I'm sorry," I said, "for putting that weight on you, for making love and loyalty feel transactional." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I stayed because I wanted to, but I also stayed because leaving felt like betrayal. Both can be true." I let that sink in. "If you'd left," I said, "it would have hurt, but I would have survived. I wish I'd believed that back then." Noah looked at me, eyes steady. "And I wish I'd believed I was allowed to leave without being the villain." We sat there, the truth finally laid bare, not as an accusation, not as a confession to be punished, but as something real we could finally look at together. "I don't want our connection to be built on fear anymore," I said. "Not yours, not mine." Noah nodded slowly. "Then this is a good place to start," he said. "Not forgiveness. Not absolution. Just two people finally honest about the cost of keeping each other close." Noah looked at me carefully before asking, like he wasn't sure he wanted the answer. "Why was it so imperative that we sleep together?" he said. "Why did it matter so much to you?" I didn't deflect this time. "I'm terrified of the dark. It's an embarrassing phobia," I admitted. "Not the poetic kind, the real kind, the kind that makes your chest lock up and your mind spiral. I was ashamed. I was supposed to be the strong one, the protector. Admitting that felt like admitting I was weak." Noah's expression softened. "So it wasn't about control." "No," I said quickly, "it was about survival. When you were there, the dark didn't close in. I could sleep, I could breathe." He nodded slowly. "I thought you needed me because I made you feel powerful." I shook my head. "You made me feel safe, there's a difference." "That explains why you panicked when I wasn't there," he said. "Why would you wake me up without even realizing it?" "I hated myself for that," I admitted. I knew I was leaning on you too hard, but once my brain decided you were the thing that kept the dark away, I didn't know how to untangle it. Noah was quiet for a long moment, then he said, I wish you'd trusted me enough to tell me. I know, I said, but fear makes liars out of people, even quiet ones. He reached out not to pull me closer, just to rest his hand briefly over mine, grounding, not possessive. You don't have to be ashamed of that, he said, but I'm glad you're saying it now because it means we can understand what it really was, not romance, not manipulation, fear. I nodded, and I don't want to need you that way anymore. Noah met my eyes. Good, he said gently, because I want to be chosen, not used as a light against the dark. I gave a small, honest smile. That's fair. And for the first time, the nights we'd shared felt clearer, not as something wrong or secret, but as two scared people doing the best they could with what they had. Noah listened quietly, his expression unreadable but attentive, as I gathered the courage to speak. When I was 15, I almost drowned in the shower, slipped, was trapped under water for longer than I should have been. I can still feel it sometimes. He flinched slightly, but he didn't look away. That's why I'm afraid of the dark, I admitted, my hands gripping my knees. It's not just the absence of light, it's the feeling of being trapped, alone, helpless. That old terror never really left me. Noah let out a slow breath, soft and measured. I didn't know, he said quietly. No one should have gone through that. I never told anyone, I continued. Not my mom, not friends. I was ashamed of being scared, afraid people would see me as weak, afraid I'd be judged for something I couldn't control. He reached out, resting a hand lightly on my arm. Being scared doesn't make you weak, he said gently. It makes you human, and surviving it, that makes you strong. I looked at him, the weight in my chest easing just a fraction. I know, I just never had anyone to say that to me until now. Noah nodded, his hand still there, steadying me. Then maybe you don't have to carry it alone anymore. For the first time in decades, the darkness felt a little less threatening, not because it was gone, but because someone I trusted was there, letting me be scared without shame. I was terrified, I said, the words catching halfway out, that being honest would make you leave. Noah's eyes softened immediately. He didn't interrupt, didn't rush to reassure, he just let me finish. I learned early that telling the truth didn't always make things safer, I went on. Sometimes it made people disappear, so I kept things buried, the fear, the shame. I thought if you knew how broken parts of me were, you'd decide I was too much. He shook his head slowly. You don't give people enough credit, he said gently, or yourself. I know that now, I said, but back then, keeping you close felt like the only way I could survive the nights. Losing you felt worse than the fear itself. Noah was quiet for a moment, then spoke carefully. It hurt sometimes, feeling like I was holding something you couldn't name, but I never wanted to leave because you were afraid. I just wanted to understand. I should have trusted you with that, I said, instead of trying to control the outcome. He nodded. Fear makes people cling, he said. It doesn't make them monsters. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I'm not asking you to forgive it, I just needed you to know why. Noah met my eyes. Thank you for telling me, he said. That matters even now. We sat there in the quiet afterward, not fixing the past, not rewriting it, but finally seeing it clearly. And somehow, knowing the truth didn't push him away. It brought a kind of calm I hadn't expected, one that didn't depend on holding anyone too tightly anymore. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. Noah, I need you to know something about me, I said. I have CPTSD. It comes from traumatic experiences I had when I was a kid. Claustrophobia, aquaphobia, being trapped or submerged terrified me. His eyes softened, and he leaned slightly closer but didn't interrupt. Kids at school, they liked to trap me in lockers, push me into the pool, I continued, the memories still sharp even decades later. I was small, defenseless, and scared half the time. I didn't tell anyone because I didn't think anyone could help. Noah's hand hovered near mine, but he didn't touch. He let me set the pace. I have nightmares, I admitted, my throat tightening. Even now, sometimes I wake up screaming or drenched in sweat reliving it, but I take anti-anxiety medication now and it helps. I can sleep most nights, I can survive the dark. He nodded slowly, absorbing every word. I'm so sorry you went through that, he said quietly. No one should have treated you like that, and you shouldn't have had to handle it alone. I didn't, I said softly. Not anymore. You've been patient with me through all my fear, my walls, my mistakes, and I wanted you to know why I sometimes acted the way I did, why I clung, why I panicked. He reached out then, gently resting a hand on my arm. Thank you for trusting me with that, he said. It doesn't make you weak, it makes you brave for surviving it. I exhaled slowly, relief washing over me. Finally, I could put the fear into words without shame. Finally, someone I trusted could see all of me, not just the parts I tried to hide. And for the first time in a long time, the dark didn't feel so threatening. Noah looked at me with concern, tilting his head. Why does your heart speed up at certain times? For no reason, he asked softly. I swallowed, trying to find the words. It's not for no reason, I admitted. Whenever I think of water or closed spaces, I get anxiety, my chest tightens, my hands shake, my heart races. Even now, decades later, it hits me like it did when I was a kid. He nodded slowly, listening. That makes sense, he said. You're not imagining it, it's your body remembering what your mind already knows. I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling. It's like my past is embedded in me. I can take medication, I can sleep, I can mostly live normally, but the triggers are still there. I still jump sometimes, I still flinch. I get it, Noah said, and I'm glad you told me. I don't think people understand how those things stay with you. It's exhausting, I admitted, but I'm learning to face it. I've survived worse. I can survive this too. I just needed you to understand why I sometimes react the way I do, why I cling, why I panic. He reached out, resting a hand lightly on mine. I understand, he said, and I'll try to remember it even when it doesn't make sense on the outside. I looked at him, feeling a rare weight lift. Thanks, I said, just knowing that makes it a little easier. Noah squeezed my hand gently, not in pity, just acknowledgement. You've been carrying this for a long time, he said. I'm here, Tate, even when it comes back unexpectedly. And for the first time, I felt like I could breathe, like my body and my mind weren't entirely at war with each other. I nodded slowly, letting Noah's words settle. It helps, just saying it out loud, I admitted. I've carried this alone for so long I forgot what it felt like to have someone listen without judging. No judgment, Noah said softly. Not from me. I can't pretend I fully understand it, but I can be here for it, for you. I gave a small, tired laugh. You don't have to understand everything, just knowing you'll stay, that's enough. He shifted closer, careful not to crowd me. We can figure it out together, he said. Triggers, anxiety, the nightmares, whatever comes up, we set the rules. I respect your space and I don't make you face it alone. I felt a warmth spread through me, a rare comfort. I've learned coping tricks over the years, I said. Breathing exercises, grounding, medication, but sometimes even when I do everything right, the panic sneaks up. That's okay, Noah said. You don't have to fight it alone. We can have signals, check-ins, whatever makes you feel safe. I thought about it. I'd like that, I said. Sometimes I just need someone to sit with me, not talk, not fix anything, just be there until it passes. Noah nodded. I can do that. You won't have to explain, you won't have to apologize for feeling what you feel. For the first time in years, I let myself relax a little, not completely, but enough to lean back and exhale. The panic didn't disappear, but it lost some of its power when I realized I wasn't carrying it alone. I don't say this often, I admitted, but I trust you with this, with me. Good, Noah said, a quiet smile on his face. Because I want to be the person you can rely on, not to fix everything, not to judge, but to sit through the dark with you. I nodded again, letting the silence wrap around us. Words weren't necessary anymore. Trust, care, and understanding were enough. And for the first time, I felt like maybe surviving the past didn't have to mean facing it alone. We sat there for a long time after that, the kind of silence that doesn't ask to be filled. Noah was the one who broke it, gently. Can we talk about what actually helps? He asked, not hypotheticals, what works when it hits you. I nodded. Okay, when my heart starts racing, the worst thing is feeling trapped physically or emotionally. If someone crowds me or demands I explain myself, it makes it worse. So space, he said, but not abandonment. Exactly, I said. I need to know you're still there, just not on top of me, sitting nearby, grounded, calm. Noah leaned back slightly, demonstrating he understood, like this. Yeah, I said, that helps. He took that in seriously. What about touch? I thought for a moment. Only if I ask. Unexpected touch can flip my nervous system, but if I say I need a hand or someone sitting next to me, that's different. Consent, he said simply. Always, I replied. He nodded. Okay, what about words? That depends, I said. Sometimes I need reminders where I am, that I'm safe, that I'm not trapped. Other times I just need quiet. So I ask, he said, not assume. I felt something loosen in my chest. Yes. Noah exhaled slowly. I wish I'd known this years ago. I wish I'd known how to say it, I replied. Back then, I didn't even understand what was happening to me. I just knew I was panicking and ashamed of it. That shame wasn't yours to carry, he said. I know that now, I said, but it shaped everything. I built my life around avoiding fear instead of learning how to sit with it. He looked at me carefully. You don't avoid it anymore. No, I admitted. Now I feel it and survive it. That's nothing, he said quietly. I gave a tired smile. It doesn't always feel brave. Bravery rarely does, Noah said. It usually just feels exhausting. We both laughed softly at that. After a moment he said, what about nights? I hesitated. Nights are harder. That's when the nightmares come. Even with medication, sometimes I wake up disoriented, heart pounding, certain I'm trapped again. What helps then? He asked. Grounding, I said. Cold water on my wrists, numbing objects in the room, breathing with a count. Sometimes, just knowing I'm not alone in the world. He nodded. If you ever call me in the middle of the night. I won't, I interrupted quickly. He held up a hand. I'm not offering because I feel obligated. I'm offering because I choose to. There's a difference. I swallowed. Okay, I said softly. Then maybe if it's really bad. That's all I'm saying, he replied. We sat with that understanding, careful not to slide into old patterns, no rescuing, no dependence, just support with limits. I want to say something, Noah added after a pause, and I need you to hear it without thinking it's a burden. Okay. You don't owe me stability in exchange for support, he said. I'm not here because you're broken, I'm here because you're honest about your shortcomings. My throat tightened. That means more than you know. He smiled faintly. I think I do. I leaned back, feeling something unfamiliar settle in. Peace, maybe, or trust that wasn't tangled with fear. I don't need you to be my light in the dark anymore, I said. I've learned how to turn one on myself. Noah nodded. Good, then if I'm there, it's because you want me there, not because you're afraid to be alone. Exactly, I said. We didn't hug, we didn't reach for each other, we didn't blur lines that had taken years to redraw. But when he stood to leave, he paused. I thought about Susie, how she listened, how she remembered. I thought about my mom, how much she'd blamed herself for things she couldn't have known. The idea of them understanding, even a little, felt lighter. Tell them I'm okay, I added, that I'm getting help, that I sleep now. I will, he said, and I'll tell them you trusted them. That word trusted sat warm in my chest. Thank you for asking first, I said, for letting it be my choice. Noah gave a small smile. Always. And as we sat there, I realized something quiet but important. Letting people in didn't make me weaker. It made the circle around me stronger. For the first time, the story didn't feel like a secret anymore. It felt like something I could share and still stand upright afterward. Noah was the love of my life, and none of my temporary lovers was ever competition. Rich boys like me had lovers, but the only person I knew who ever got under the wire around my heart was Noah. I pushed the front door of my house open harder than I meant to. It thudded against the stopper, the sound echoing down the hallway. The house smelled like garlic and butter. Something was simmering on the stove, normal, domestic, peaceful. Too peaceful for the storm in my chest. Chloe, I called. In the kitchen, she answered brightly. I stepped into the kitchen and saw her standing at the stove, wearing a soft sweater and stirring something in a pan. Music played quietly from her phone on the counter. She turned when she heard my footsteps. Hey, she said with a smile, you're home early, dinner's almost. The smile faded when she saw my face. What happened? I dropped my keys on the counter harder than I needed to. The metal clanged against the granite. Your brother, I said flatly. Chloe blinked. Charles. Yes, Charles. She set the spoon down slowly. What about him? I laughed once, humorless. What about him? I repeated. You want to know what he did? Her eyebrows pulled together. Tate, what's going on? I ran a hand through my hair, packing the kitchen. I just saw him, I said, and he had photographs. She frowned. Photographs of what? Of Noah. The name hung in the air. Chloe stiffened slightly. She knew the history, not all of it but enough. What kind of photographs? She asked carefully. I turned to face her, anger surging again. Illicit ones, I said, private ones, the kind you don't take of someone unless you're trying to humiliate them. Her eyes widened. What? He was showing them around, I continued, laughing, making jokes, saying disgusting things about Noah, about men like him. Chloe's face paled. No, she said softly, Charles wouldn't. He did, I snapped. Silence filled the room except for the simmering pan. I pointed toward the counter. Your brother is a sleaze, a homophobe, I said, and a disgusting, awful human being. Tate. No, I cut her off. Don't defend him, don't even try. He defended your brother after the attack at my parents' house, and now Charles is pulling this crap with Noah again. She looked stunned. I'm not defending him, she said. I just don't get why he'd have those. He didn't just have them, I said. He was enjoying them. My hands clenched. He and his gross friends were enjoying humiliating someone, enjoying the fact that he had something private and degrading he could wave around like a trophy. Chloe shook her head slowly. That doesn't sound like your brother, I finished. Yeah, I know, everyone thinks their family is better than they are. That's not fair. No, I said quietly, what Charles did isn't fair. She looked down at the counter. What exactly did he say? I exhaled slowly, trying to steady myself. He said a lot of things, I said. Most of them were disgusting, homophobic garbage, the kind of stuff I expect from drunk idiots in bars, not from my wife's brother. Chloe winced. He's always been blunt, she said weakly. Blunt is saying someone's haircut looks bad. What he said was hateful. I stepped closer to the counter. And then he started laughing about Noah. Her eyes lifted to mine. And that, I said quietly, is where I lost my patience. What did you do? I told him to shut his mouth, I said. I told him he had no right to talk about my childhood buddy that way. She swallowed. And he kept going, Tate hissed. He said men like Noah deserved to be made fun of and treated like a piece of meat. Said if you live that kind of life you should expect people to laugh. Chloe looked horrified now. He said that. Yes. She ran a hand over her face. Oh my God. And then, I continued, voice dropping, he started waving the photos again like they were a joke. The anger rose in my chest again. I wanted to knock them out of his hands. Tate. I didn't, I said quickly, but I wanted to. The kitchen went quiet again. Finally Chloe said softly, I'm sorry. I looked at her. I really am, she continued. That's awful. I nodded once. Yeah, it is. She leaned against the counter. I didn't know he had those, she said. I believe you. Charles can be a jerk sometimes, she admitted, but this is another level. Yes, I said, it is. She looked up again. So what do you want me to do? I didn't hesitate. I don't want him in this house. Her eyes widened slightly. Ever, I added. Tate. No, I said firmly, listen to me. I leaned forward, hands braced on the counter. This is a boundary. She stared at me. I mean it, Chloe, I don't want Charles in this house, not for dinner, not for holidays, not for anything. That's extreme. No, I said calmly, it's not. He's my brother. And Noah is my priority. She hesitated. I'm not asking you to cut him out of your life, I said. You can see him, talk to him, have lunch with him, do whatever you want. But he doesn't come here. I tapped the counter. This house is supposed to be safe, respectful, a place where people aren't mocked or humiliated. She looked conflicted. You're asking me to choose between you and my brother. No, I said, I'm asking you to respect a boundary inside your home. That's basically the same thing. It isn't. I straightened. You can go see him any time you want, but he doesn't step through that door again. She crossed her arms. You're really serious about this? Yes. She stared at the floor for a moment. He's still family. And so is the man he tried to humiliate. Chloe looked up. Is this really about Noah? Yes, I said without hesitation. Why? The question hung between us. I exhaled slowly. Because Noah didn't do anything to deserve that, I said, and because I won't tolerate someone mocking him in my presence. Her voice softened. You care about him a lot. Yes. That hasn't changed. No, I admitted, it hasn't. She studied my face. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. Finally, she said, if I tell Charles he's not welcome here, he's going to flip out. That's his problem. He'll think you hate him. I don't hate him, I said, I just don't trust him. She turned back to me. What if he apologizes? I thought about that. If he apologizes to Noah, I said slowly, and he understands why what he did was wrong, then maybe someday we can revisit the conversation. Maybe. Maybe. She nodded slowly. That's fair. I could see the conflict in her eyes, family loyalty versus what she knew was right. Finally she sighed. Okay. I blinked. Okay. I'll talk to him, she said, and until he apologizes and fixes this, he won't come here. Relief washed through me, mixed with lingering anger. Thank you. She walked around the counter and stood in front of me. I'm really sorry he did that, she said again. I know. She studied me carefully. You did this for Noah. Yes. Even though you said you were closing that chapter. I did close it, I said quietly. But childhood buddies still matter. She nodded. And basic human decency, I added. Chloe reached up and touched my arm. You're a good man, Tate. I shook my head. No, I'm just someone who refuses to tolerate cruelty. She smiled faintly. Well, that's still pretty good. The tension in the room slowly began to ease. Behind us, the food simmered again, filling the kitchen with warmth and garlic and something that felt a little more like home. And for the first time since seeing those photographs, my anger finally began to settle. That street photography. No, I cut in sharply, it's not. Chloe's mouth snapped shut. I dragged the envelope back toward me and held it up. This isn't art. I shook the photographs loose again, spreading them across the counter like evidence. This is stalking, this is humiliation, this is someone taking a private person's life and turning it into entertainment. Chloe rubbed her arms, uncomfortable. Tate, you're overreacting. I stared at her. Am I? Yes. He followed Noah for weeks. Her eyes flicked up. What? He had folders. The memory made my stomach twist again. Folders of him, different days, different places on that cruise ship. Chloe's face paled slightly. He shouldn't have been doing that, she admitted. No, I said coldly, he shouldn't have. I shoved the photographs back together. And while he's collecting them like trophies, he and his friends are laughing about how Noah deserves to be assaulted. Her head snapped up. He didn't say that. He did. My voice dropped. Word for word. Silence filled the kitchen. Chloe looked genuinely shaken now. He said guys like Noah are nothing but meat, I continued, my voice thick with anger, that they exist for men to use and abuse. Her lips parted slightly. And then, I said bitterly, he said Noah deserved to be raped by guys because he doesn't want girls. Chloe looked sick. That's disgusting. Yes. It's vile. Yes. She shook her head slowly. I didn't know he talked like that. Well, now you do. I leaned back against the counter, folding my arms. That's why I hate what Charles is. The words came out flat and final. Chloe stared at me. Hate is a strong word. He earned it. He's my brother. And Noah is my heart. The sentence landed heavily between us. Chloe blinked. You've known Noah longer than you've known me, she said quietly. Yes. But that doesn't mean you get to punch my brother. I let out a humorless laugh. Trust me, Chloe, I showed restraint. Her eyes widened. Restraint. He deserved worse. What exactly happened? I ran a hand down my face. When I got there, he was showing the photos to 3 of his friends. Chloe listened silently. They were sitting around his studio drinking beer. My jaw tightened. And laughing. My fists clenched unconsciously as the memory replayed. I asked him what the hell he thought he was doing. And he told me to relax. I gave a harsh laugh. He said it was hilarious watching that little faggot sneak around town with different guys and the pics were from a gay cruise. Chloe winced. I continued, my voice low and furious. He said Noah probably begged for it, said guys like him are desperate for attention. Chloe looked down at the counter. And then, I said quietly, he said someone should teach him a lesson. Her head lifted slowly. What kind of lesson? I met her eyes. The kind that involves rape and straightening out fags. Her face drained of color. He didn't. He did. The room felt suffocatingly quiet. And that's when you punched him, she said softly. Yes. How hard? Hard enough that he shut up. Chloe exhaled slowly. Tate. I warned him first. You warned him. I told him to shut his mouth. My pulse still pounded when I thought about it. He laughed. I shook my head. And then he said Noah would probably enjoy it. Chloe closed her eyes. Oh God. Yeah. My voice came out hoarse. So I punched him. The memory was sharp and satisfying. My fist connected with his jaw. I flexed my hand unconsciously. He hit the floor. Chloe stared at me in disbelief. You knocked him down. Yes. And then what? I took the photos. All of them. Her brow furrowed. You stole them. I confiscated them, then I paid him. Tate. He doesn't deserve to have them. They're technically his property. He used them to humiliate someone, it's disgusting. She sighed. You can't just go around punching people because you're angry. I straightened. I didn't punch him because I was angry. She looked skeptical. Then why? Because he crossed a line. My voice was calm now. Dead calm. He used dehumanizing and abhorrent language. Chloe said nothing. He made jokes about a vulnerable young man who had consensual sex with other guys. My chest tightened as I spoke. It may be weird and unnatural in my opinion, I admitted. Chloe's eyes flickered. But no one, I continued, my voice rising, no one reduces the boy I've loved my whole life to a piece of meat that deserves to be assaulted by pigs. The words echoed through the kitchen. Tate. I mean it. My voice boomed off the walls. I don't care what Noah does in private, I don't care who he sleeps with. I pointed at the empty envelope again. But nobody treats him like an animal. Chloe looked at me with a complicated expression. You really went to war for him today. I defended him. You broke my brother's jaw. I punched him. That's the same thing. Good. Her eyes widened slightly. You're not even sorry. No. The word came out instantly. I stepped closer to the counter, lowering my voice. I punched Charles and took every single hateful photograph from his studio about Noah. I placed the envelope firmly in the drawer beside me and shut it. Chloe stared at the drawer. You're protecting Noah. Yes. Why? I looked at her. Because he's been through enough. Her eyes searched mine for a long moment. Then she turned back to the stove quietly and stirred the pot again. The kitchen filled with the sound of simmering sauce. After a minute she spoke. Charles is going to be furious. He can be furious somewhere else. She glanced over her shoulder. You really meant what you said earlier. Yes. You don't want him here. No. Ever. I met her gaze steadily. Not if he talks about Noah like that. Chloe studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. All right. I blinked in surprise. All right. If he tries to come here, she said calmly, and he starts that kind of garbage, I'll throw him out myself. Some of the tension drained from my chest. Thank you. She shrugged faintly. I may love my brother, she said, but I'm not defending cruelty. She looked at me again. You really scared me when you walked in tonight. Sorry. You looked like you were about to burn the house down. I rubbed the back of my neck. I was close. She gave a small sigh. Well, dinner's almost ready. The normalcy of the statement felt strange after everything that had just happened. But maybe that was the point. Life is moving forward. Even after anger. Even after violence. I sat down at the table slowly, my mind still racing. And somewhere deep down, beneath the fury and the exhaustion, there was one quiet thought I couldn't shake. If Charles ever spoke about Noah like that again, I wasn't sure I'd stop at one punch next time. Dinner plates sat between us, but neither of us had started eating. Chloe had turned the stove off and brought the food to the table. Steam curled lazily off the pasta. Normally, she would have been chatting about something, work, the grocery store, some article she had read, but the house had gone quiet after the fight. She kept glancing at me. I pushed the food around with my fork without taking a bite. Finally she said softly, "You're still shaking." "I'm fine." "You're not fine." I exhaled slowly. Chloe leaned back in her chair, studying me carefully. "You didn't just get angry," she said, "you exploded." I didn't answer. That wasn't normal anger, Tate. I stared at the plate. "Tate. What? Why did it affect you like that?" I shrugged stiffly, "Because Charles is an asshole." "Yes," she said calmly, "but you've known that for years." I clenched my jaw. She leaned forward slightly. "There's something else." Silence stretched. I hadn't planned on explaining it. In fact, I hadn't even realized why I'd reacted so violently until I was sitting here replaying the afternoon in my head. But Chloe kept watching me. Waiting. Finally I set my fork down. "You want to know why I lost it?" "Yes." I rubbed my temples slowly. When Charles started showing those photos, something clicked in my head. "What do you mean?" I stared at the table. "I've always hated that kind of thing." "What kind of thing?" "People taking pictures of someone when they're vulnerable." She frowned slightly. "Like paparazzi." "Worse." I looked up at her. "Kids." Her expression softened. "Or adults who don't know they're being photographed," I added. "People who can't defend themselves, people who didn't agree to it." Chloe was quiet now. "That's always been one of my biggest pet peeves." "You never mentioned that before." "I never had a reason to." I leaned back in the chair. "When I saw those photos of Noah, I knew immediately he didn't know they were being taken." "How could you tell?" "The angles," I said. I gestured vaguely. "They were shot from far away, through windows from across the room." Her brow furrowed. "Like surveillance." "Exactly." She glanced toward the drawer where the envelope sat. "So you think Noah never agreed to them?" "I know he didn't. The pictures taken during the gay cruise were consensual but not the others." "How?" "Because he hates attention." Chloe nodded slowly. "That's true. And because none of those pictures look staged." I paused. He was just living his life. Walking. Talking. Drinking coffee. Leaving a building. Being a normal person. And your brother turned it into a spectacle. Chloe sighed quietly. "But Tate, some of those photos were from cruising back rooms." "So, you know what kind of bars?" I gave a small humorless laugh. "Yes, I know." She folded her hands together. "If Noah was going to those places, meeting men, isn't there an argument that he deserved it?" "No," she said quickly, "that he understood the risk of being seen." "That's not the same thing." I leaned forward again, my voice tightening. "Even if Noah consented to being on that cruise, it doesn't matter." Even mentioning it left a sour taste in my mouth. "Even if he consented to sleeping with those guys, that doesn't mean he consented to being photographed." Chloe nodded slowly. "That's fair. And he definitely didn't consent to being mocked." My jaw tightened again. "Or having his private life turned into entertainment." She studied my face carefully. "You took that personally." "I did." "Why?" I hesitated. Because that was the part I hadn't wanted to say out loud. I stared at my hands for a long moment. "When I was young," I said quietly, "no one ever stood up for me." Chloe's expression shifted immediately. "What do you mean?" "Exactly what I said." I shrugged slightly. "When things happened, people looked the other way." Her eyes narrowed with concern. What things? Doesn't matter. Tate. It doesn't matter anymore. The room fell quiet. Chloe watched me carefully. You're saying when you saw those photos, it reminded you of something. Not exactly. Then what? I sighed. It reminded me of what it's like when nobody steps in. Her face softened. When someone's being humiliated, and everyone else just laughs. My voice had gone quieter without me realizing it. Or pretends it's not happening. Chloe didn't interrupt. So when Charles and his friends were sitting there making jokes, I shook my head slowly. I couldn't stand it. My throat tightened. I kept thinking someone should shut them up. She nodded slightly. And that someone was you. Yes. I ran a hand over my face. I never had a man, but my uncle stood up for me when I was young. The words felt strange leaving my mouth. Heavy. So I did it for Noah. Chloe looked at me differently now. Not angry. Not defensive. Just thoughtful. You've never told me that before. There was never a reason. And today gave you one. Apparently. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said softly, "You're a good buddy to Noah." I let out a faint laugh. I punched your brother. Still. She rested her chin on her hand. Not many people would risk a fight for someone else like that. I shrugged again, uncomfortable with the praise. I didn't do it to be noble. Why did you do it? Because it was wrong. She nodded slowly. That's usually why people do the right thing. I finally took a bite of the pasta. It had gone slightly cold. Chloe watched me for another moment. Then she said quietly, "For what it's worth, I'm glad someone stood up for him." I glanced up. You mean that? Yes. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand briefly. No one deserves to be treated like that. I nodded. And for the first time since leaving Charles's studio earlier that day, the knot in my chest loosened just a little. Chloe and I didn't talk about the photographs again, not once. The envelope had sat in the kitchen drawer for a week before I finally took it out, empty now since the photos were back where they belonged, or at least where they had ended up, with Noah. I'd returned them in person. The memory of that conversation still left a bitter taste in my mouth. Because that had been the day I confronted him about lying. About pretending he was straight. About pretending all those years that what we had was just friendship. But I pushed the memory away. I didn't want to think about that night, or about the way Noah had looked when I handed him the envelope, or about the argument that followed. Some things were better left buried. Chloe must have sensed that because she never brought it up again either. Not the photos, not Charles, not Noah. Life moved forward, and I knew something about myself that most people didn't. If I ever saw something like that again, if I ever saw someone photographing Noah without his consent, or joking about him, or trying to humiliate him, or worse, if anyone ever tried to blackmail him with something like that, my jaw tightened just thinking about it. That person would be lucky to be drinking out of a straw when they woke up in a hospital. I didn't say that out loud, not to Chloe, not to anyone, but I knew it was true. Because some things in this world crossed a line you couldn't come back from, and degrading someone for who they slept with, turning their private life into a weapon, that was one of those lines. Even if I didn't understand Noah's life, even if part of me still thought it was strange, even if I didn't want to look too closely at what it meant, no one deserved to be humiliated, no one deserved to be mocked. No one, not even Noah, deserved to be exploited. And Noah, for all his mistakes, had already carried enough weight in this world. He didn't need predators adding more. I took my wife Chloe out for an elaborate, extravagant dinner. As we settled into our table, I looked at her and said, "There's something I want to discuss with you." She smiled, glancing around the elegant dining room. "This is a lovely restaurant," Chloe said. "I heard it just opened last month. Mia told me all about it. She's one of my girlfriends. Her date brought her here on opening night and she couldn't stop talking about how amazing it was." When the last course was cleared away, Chloe reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "That was such an amazing meal," she said with a warm smile. "Thank you so much, Tate, for bringing me here. It was incredibly thoughtful." I held her gaze, my expression turning serious. "You might not say that," I said quietly, "after you hear what I have to say." Chloe looked up at Tate, her smile slowly fading as she noticed the seriousness in his eyes. A moment ago, the restaurant had felt warm and inviting, filled with the soft glow of candlelight, the gentle hum of conversation, and the clinking of glasses. Now it felt strangely quiet. She tilted her head. "Tate, what's going on?" He drew in a slow breath, staring down at his untouched coffee before finally meeting her gaze again. "I want to start by saying something that I've needed to tell you for a long time." Chloe nodded, her expression becoming uncertain. She reached across the table and rested her hand over his. "Whatever it is," she said softly, "just tell me." Tate swallowed hard. "Chloe, you are the most amazing woman I've ever known, and I don't say that lightly. Before I met you, I never thought anyone could ever upstage Susie in my life. Somehow, you did." A faint relieved smile crossed Chloe's face. "I loved our dates. I loved spending time together. Some of the happiest memories I have are with you. I enjoyed our road trips, our late-night conversations, watching movies together, and all the little moments that made us feel like a team." Her smile grew a little wider. "I know," she said quietly. "I loved all of it too." Tate's expression remained solemn. "I even loved the way we made up after arguments, although I wish we hadn't had so many." Chloe let out a nervous laugh. "We've always been stubborn," she said, trying to lighten the mood. He didn't laugh. The silence that followed made the knot in Chloe's stomach tighten. "Tate," she whispered, "you're scaring me." He looked away for a moment before continuing. "I know you've put up with a lot of my crap to stay with me. You've been patient when I didn't deserve patience. You've forgiven me more times than I can count. You've loved me even when I wasn't easy to love." Chloe squeezed his hand. "I married you because I love you," she said. "Whatever this is, we'll get through it." Tate slowly withdrew his hand. "I don't think we will." The words hung between them. Chloe blinked, the color draining from her face. "What do you mean?" He took another deep breath. "I think our marriage was a mistake." She stared at him in stunned silence, unable to respond. "I think deep down I knew it from the very beginning, and I think you knew it too." Her lips parted but no words came. "When I broke up with you before we got engaged, I should never have second-guessed that decision. I convinced myself I was making the wrong choice, but I wasn't. I was just afraid of hurting you." A tear welled in Chloe's eye. "So, all of this," she whispered, "our engagement, our wedding." He lowered his head. "I'm sorry." Another tear slipped down her cheek. "I'm sorry for the 1 year and 9 months you've had to settle for less than you deserve. You deserve someone who adores you, worships the ground you walk on, someone who would give everything for you without hesitation." Her voice trembled. I thought that was you." Tate closed his eyes for a moment. "That's what I wanted to be." He looked back at her, his own eyes beginning to glisten. "I care about you deeply, Chloe, I always will. In many ways, I do feel those things for you, but they're platonic, they aren't romantic." Chloe slowly shook her head in disbelief. "No. I had never been in a relationship before you. I'd never been in love with a woman. I didn't understand what I was feeling. I thought what I felt was love because I had nothing to compare it to." His voice cracked. "But over time, I realized it wasn't the kind of love a husband should feel for his wife. I kept waiting for those feelings to grow, believing they eventually would. They never did." Chloe covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face. "So, you've never been in love with me?" The question shattered what little composure Tate had left. He looked at her with heartbreaking regret. "No," he whispered, "and that's the greatest regret of my life because you deserved someone who was." Chloe sat motionless, her eyes fixed on Tate as though she were waiting for him to tell her this was all some terrible misunderstanding. Around them the restaurant continued as if nothing had happened. Waiters carried elegant dishes to nearby tables, glasses clinked in celebration, and soft music drifted through the room. It felt surreal that the rest of the world could go on while hers seemed to be coming apart. She searched his face desperately. "There has to be something we can do," she whispered. "Marriage counseling, time apart, anything." Tate slowly shook his head. "I've spent months asking myself those same questions." His voice was calm, but every word seemed to cost him. "I've tried convincing myself that if I worked harder, if I became a better husband, if I just waited long enough, something inside me would change." He paused, swallowing against the lump in his throat. "It never did." Chloe's fingers tightened around the edge of the tablecloth. So you've already made up your mind. He lowered his eyes. I have. The answer struck her like a physical blow. She blinked several times, trying to stop the tears gathering in her eyes. So, she said, her voice barely audible, our marriage means nothing to you. His face immediately twisted with pain. No, Chloe, please don't think that. She looked at him with heartbreak written across her face. Then help me understand. Tate let out a slow, trembling breath. Our marriage is one of the most regretful decisions I've ever made. Chloe flinched as though he'd slapped her. The words echoed in her mind. One of the most regretful decisions. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. Tate. It's not because of anything you've done, he said quickly, not one single thing. She looked away, unable to meet his eyes. You've been kind, patient, loving, you've stood beside me when most people wouldn't have. Her shoulders shook as she quietly cried. You didn't fail me. He leaned forward slightly. I failed you. She closed her eyes. I hate myself for putting you in this position. His own voice began to crack. I hate myself for knowing that after tonight, your whole life changes because of me. A tear escaped down his cheek. I hate myself for embarrassing you, and for whatever embarrassment comes after we separate. Chloe wiped at her face with her napkin, but the tears kept coming. He continued quietly. I hate knowing you're going to have to answer awkward questions. She gave a small, bitter laugh through her tears. My mother is going to ask me what I did wrong. Tate nodded sadly. I know. My brothers will ask. I know. Our friends. I know. She looked down at her wedding ring. They're all going to think I couldn't keep my husband. Tate immediately shook his head. No. They're going to whisper. I know they will. They're going to take sides. I know. They'll probably blame me. He leaned forward, his expression filled with anguish. And that's exactly what I hate. He rubbed a hand across his face before continuing. I hate that people are going to blame you for everything. I hate that you're going to be cornered at parties by people from our social circle who think they're entitled to know what happened. I hate that your family is going to ask questions you don't want to answer. I hate that complete strangers will make assumptions about you. He paused, forcing himself to continue. But none of it will be your fault. Chloe stared silently at him. None of it. He spoke with absolute certainty. You didn't cause this. Another long silence settled between them. And honestly, he hesitated before forcing out the next words. It isn't really my fault either. She frowned through her tears. What do you mean? He looked down at the table. It wasn't even my idea to get married. Chloe froze. Her breathing caught. What? She searched his face, hoping she'd misunderstood him. It wasn't your idea. Her heart pounded as she waited for him to explain, dreading whatever he was about to say next. Tate lowered his eyes to the table, unable to look at Chloe any longer. His hands trembled slightly as he folded them together, then unfolded them again. He looked like a man carrying a weight that had become too heavy to bear. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I'm damaged beyond repair, Chloe. She immediately shook her head. No. He didn't look up. I am. No, you're not. Her voice cracked with desperation. You're hurting, that's not the same thing. A faint, heartbreaking smile crossed his face. I wish you were right. She reached across the table again, placing her hand over his. We can fix this, she pleaded. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together, that's what marriage is. For a moment, Tate stared at her hand resting on his. Then, with obvious reluctance, he gently pulled his own hand away. You shouldn't have to. Confusion washed over Chloe's face. What? You shouldn't have to spend the rest of your life trying to put together whatever shards are left of me. A tear rolled down her cheek. I don't see shards. I do. His answer came instantly. I see someone who's broken in ways that can't be repaired. Chloe's breathing became uneven. I don't believe that. I do. Another long silence stretched between them. I can't make you happy, Tate continued quietly. God knows I've tried. You have made me happy. She spoke without hesitation. You've made me happier than anyone ever has. He slowly shook his head. Not in the way you deserve. He looked out the restaurant window for a moment before continuing. I can't be emotionally vulnerable the way you need me to be. I can't just open up and say whatever I'm thinking. Every conversation feels filtered. Every emotion feels locked behind another wall. His shoulders sagged. I've spent so much of my life pretending, hiding, measuring every word before I say it, that I don't even know how to stop. Chloe listened through silent tears. I kept telling myself that eventually the pressure would disappear, that eventually I'd become the husband you deserved. He gave a hollow laugh. But now, he finally looked her in the eyes. Maybe the pressure is gone because I've finally admitted the truth to myself. His voice cracked. And I can't lie anymore. The words hung heavily between them. Chloe swallowed hard. What truth? He hesitated so long she wondered if he would answer. Then he spoke. If you knew how damaged I really was. His eyes filled with tears. You never would have married me. She stared at him speechless. If you honestly knew what kind of man I am. He struggled to continue. And if you knew everything I've done. His voice broke completely. You never would have agreed to go on a first date with me. Chloe felt her stomach knot. What are you talking about? Fear had replaced the heartbreak in her voice. Tate. She searched his face, suddenly realizing there were parts of the man she'd married that she had never truly known. What have you done? He closed his eyes, unable to answer immediately, as the silence between them became heavier than either of them could deny. Tate sat in silence for several long moments, gathering what little strength he had left. When he finally looked at Chloe again, his eyes were red with exhaustion. I won't let you spend the rest of your life competing with a ghost. Chloe frowned. A ghost? He nodded slowly. I'm tired of comparing you to the one that got away. Her expression crumbled. You've been comparing me this whole time. He couldn't bring himself to answer immediately. Not because you weren't enough. His voice was barely audible. You were always enough. Then why, she asked, tears spilling freely down her face, why wasn't that enough? He looked away. Because the problem has never been you. His jaw tightened. The problem has always been me. She shook her head over and over. I don't understand. I'm tired, Tate whispered. He rubbed his eyes with the heels of his hands. I'm tired of pretending to be the person you need me to be. His breathing became uneven. I'm tired of waking up every morning hoping I'll suddenly become the husband you deserve. He swallowed hard. And he hesitated before forcing the words out. I'm tired of being Tate Blue. Chloe stared at him in disbelief. What does that even mean? He looked at her with heartbreaking sadness. It means I've spent years pretending to be someone I thought everyone needed me to be. She covered her mouth. I don't know who you are anymore. Neither do I. The confession came so quietly she almost missed it. A long silence settled over the table. Then Tate reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. Chloe watched as he carefully removed a large yellow envelope. Her heart immediately began racing. Tate. He rested the envelope gently on the table but kept one hand on top of it. I've already filed for an annulment. The words stole the air from her lungs. She stared at the envelope as though it might disappear if she looked long enough. No. I filed the paperwork over a month ago. Her head snapped back toward him. A month. He nodded once. You already decided. His eyes filled with tears. Yes. And you let me think everything was okay. I couldn't tell you then. Her voice trembled. Why? He looked down. Because my father had just died. Chloe's face softened for only a moment. I knew you were grieving him. He nodded. I couldn't bring myself to hand you a yellow envelope across the kitchen table while you were planning his funeral. He shook his head. I didn't want to be that cruel. A tear rolled down his cheek. I wanted you to have time to grieve my father before I asked you to grieve the end of our marriage. Chloe buried her face in her hands as quiet sobs escaped her. I never wanted to hurt you like this. She slowly lowered her hands. But you did. I know. You let me keep making plans. I know. You let me believe we still had a future. I know. Every answer sounded like another apology. Tate looked at her with profound sorrow. You deserve a man who isn't haunted by ghosts. His voice was hollow. You deserve someone who wakes up every morning certain he wants to spend his life with you. He pushed the envelope gently toward her. I can't be that man. He looked out the window into the darkness beyond the restaurant. Whatever I've done. He paused, struggling to continue. Whatever I've become. He closed his eyes. It makes it impossible for me to be your husband. His voice broke. I don't think it even allows me to be myself anymore. Chloe stared at the man she loved, hardly recognizing the broken stranger sitting across from her. Through her tears, she whispered the question she had been afraid to ask all night. Who is the ghost you've been talking about, and what happened to you? Tate remained silent, unable or unwilling to answer. The only sound between them was Chloe's quiet sobbing and the distant murmur of the restaurant, blissfully unaware that an entire marriage had just fallen apart at table 12. Tate sat perfectly still, staring at the candle burning between them. Its flame flickered, reflecting in his eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded distant, almost detached. I found out yesterday that Noah has been in love with me since he was 8 years old. Chloe's eyebrows knit together in confusion. What? He nodded slowly. He finally told me. She searched his face, trying to understand. And what did you say? A sad smile crossed his lips before disappearing just as quickly. I told him I could never love him. She blinked. You rejected him. I did. Why? He closed his eyes. I just never told him the real reason. Silence settled between them. When he opened his eyes again, they looked older than they had only an hour earlier. The truth is. He took a slow breath. Tate Blue has never been available. Chloe stared at him. I don't understand. I've spent years pretending there was something to choose. His voice grew quieter. There wasn't. He looked down at his hands. I don't have a heart to give away, Chloe. Her expression broke all over again. Please don't say that. It's true. No. She leaned toward him, desperate to reach him somehow. You've loved people. I've cared about people. He gently corrected her. That's different. A tear slipped down his face. The only person I've ever truly loved. He paused, disgust washing over his expression. Is myself. Chloe recoiled slightly, not out of fear but disbelief. I don't believe that. I wish you were right. He laughed bitterly. It would make all of this easier. She shook her head. No, Tate, selfish people don't sit across from their wives crying because they're afraid of hurting them. He gave a tired smile. Maybe. He looked toward the window, watching strangers walk past outside. But when you can't be with the person you want to be with. His voice became almost a whisper. I'd rather be alone. Chloe lowered her head. So neither of us ever had a chance. He didn't answer immediately. Finally he whispered. No. She covered her face as another wave of tears overtook her. I'm sorry if I hurt you. His voice trembled. I'm sorry if I hurt Noah. He swallowed hard. But I can't love either of you the way you deserve. His words came slowly now, each one heavier than the last. I don't have that to give. He closed his eyes. I'm not free. Another long silence filled the space between them. When he finally looked at Chloe again, there was an emptiness in his expression she had never seen before. I don't think I'll ever be free. Chloe stared at him through tear-filled eyes, realizing that the man she had married wasn't simply asking to leave the marriage. He truly believed he was beyond saving. For the first time that evening, she wasn't just mourning the loss of her husband. She was mourning the loss of the man he believed he could never become. Tate looked at Chloe with tears in his eyes. His voice had grown quiet, but every word carried the weight of years of regret. I want something for you that I could never give you. Chloe wiped away another tear, unable to look away from him. I want you to find a love like the one I've spent my whole life carrying. He took a slow breath. I want you to find a man who loves you more than he loves his own life. A man who wakes up every morning wondering how he got lucky enough to have you. A man who never stops pursuing you, even after decades together, because he never wants you to doubt for a single second that you're the center of his world. His voice softened. I want you to find someone who would defy every expectation society places on him just to be with you. Someone who would gladly endure criticism, rejection, humiliation, or loneliness if it meant spending one more day at your side. He smiled sadly. I want you to find a man who never stops dreaming about you, the kind of man who still catches himself smiling when he hears your name, the kind of man who still gets butterflies when you walk into the room. Chloe lowered her eyes, tears falling silently onto the tablecloth. I want you to love someone who never stops feeling like a dream to you, someone whose absence never makes them ordinary, someone you would still cherish with every piece of your heart even after death had separated you. He paused, collecting himself. You deserve a love so extraordinary that a man would challenge every rule, every expectation, every obstacle, even every human law if that was the only way he could be with you. That's the kind of love everyone deserves. His voice cracked as he looked at her. And it's almost beautiful in a heartbreaking way how deeply you love me. He managed a faint, sorrowful smile. And how deeply Noah loves me. His smile disappeared. But my heart belongs somewhere else. He looked down at his hands. It always has. A long silence followed before he whispered the words that hurt him most to say. I'm sorry that the man you chose was never capable of loving you the way you deserved. You deserved to be someone's first thought every morning, someone's last thought every night, and the love of their life. I wanted to become that man for you. He slowly shook his head. But wanting to be him and actually being him were never the same thing. Tate looked at Chloe for a long time before speaking again. His expression was filled with sorrow, but beneath it was a quiet certainty that hadn't been there earlier in the evening. Keeping you with me would be the cruelest thing I've ever done. Chloe's eyes widened. What? He slowly shook his head. It would be selfish. She stared at him in disbelief. You think fighting for our marriage is selfish? No. His answer was gentle. I think asking you to stay in a marriage where your husband can't love you the way you deserve is selfish. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. I made vows, Tate. So did I. His voice cracked. And every day I stay knowing I can't give you my whole heart, I break them a little more. He paused, searching for the right words. You only get one, maybe two, chances at a love that completely changes your life. He looked at her with heartbreaking tenderness. I refuse to let me be the reason you miss yours. Chloe lowered her head. I already found mine. He swallowed hard. No. He spoke the words softly but with conviction. You found someone who cares about you. He pressed a hand against his chest. But somewhere out there is a man who will want you in exactly the way you've always deserved to be wanted. His eyes glistened. He'll look at you and wonder how he ever lived before meeting you. He'll think you're extraordinary on your best days and on your worst. He'll never make you question whether you're enough. A tear slipped down Chloe's cheek. You deserve that. He looked away for a moment. Maybe I could give you the life you've always wanted. He managed a sad smile. I could probably give you stability, a beautiful home, vacations, laughter, friendship. His smile disappeared. I could give you affection. He hesitated. But I can't give you the kind of love that makes a person feel chosen every single day. His voice became quieter. And if you're anything like me. He stopped, collecting himself. If you've ever experienced what real love feels like. He looked back into her eyes. Then you know there's no substitute for it. He shook his head. I wouldn't wish anything less than that on you. A long silence settled between them. Finally, he whispered the words he'd been avoiding all evening. The truth is. His jaw tightened. I want someone else. Chloe closed her eyes as if the sentence itself had knocked the air from her lungs. He continued before she could speak. Maybe that someone only exists in memories now. He stared at the candle between them. Maybe all I have left is smoke, echoes, moments that I can never get back. A tear rolled down his face. But those memories are still more honest than pretending I can become the husband you deserve. He slowly reached for his wedding ring but stopped before removing it. I would rather spend the rest of my life living with those memories than spend yours making you settle for someone whose heart belongs somewhere else. His voice broke. I refuse to let you become second place to a love I never let go of. He looked at Chloe one final time, tears freely falling now. You deserve to be someone's first choice. A painful silence filled the space between them. And I love you too much to keep pretending you already are. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The candle between them had nearly burned to the bottom, its small flame flickering as the silence settled over the table. Tate reached for his glass of whiskey, lifted it with an unsteady hand and took a slow drink. He welcomed the burn if only because it gave him something else to feel. Chloe watched him carefully. There was one question she couldn't let go of. Tate. He looked up. Have you ever been in love? He stared into the amber whiskey swirling in his glass before answering. Yeah. The word came quietly, almost as a confession. I've been in love. Chloe's heart sank. Part of her had already known the answer. Hearing him say it aloud still hurt more than she expected. She swallowed. What happened to her? Tate didn't answer immediately. His gaze drifted somewhere far beyond the restaurant, as though he were looking into another lifetime. When he finally spoke, his voice was almost hollow. She died. Chloe felt the air leave her lungs. Oh. Another long silence followed. She died in a car accident. The words were simple, but they carried years of grief. Chloe's expression softened, the anger she'd been holding onto gave way to compassion. I'm so sorry. Tate nodded once. So am I. He finished the last of his whiskey and gently set the empty glass back on the table. Not a day goes by that I don't think about her. His eyes never left the glass. And not a day goes by that I don't wish I could have traded places with her. Chloe reached toward him instinctively before stopping herself, realizing she no longer knew whether she had the right to comfort him. She slowly withdrew her hand. I'm sorry you've had to carry that alone, she whispered. Tate gave her a faint, weary smile. I've been carrying it so long. He looked out the window into the darkness. I don't remember what it feels like to set it down. Tate looked down at the empty whiskey glass, turning it slowly between his fingers. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, but there was an unmistakable sadness behind it. I'd rather live with the memories of someone who's gone than spend the rest of my life with the wrong person. He looked up at Chloe, his eyes glistening. I know that sounds cruel, maybe it is. He swallowed hard. And I'm sorry if that means I'm hurting you, and I'm sorry if it means I'm hurting Noah. His shoulders sagged beneath the weight of his confession. I never wanted either of you to pay the price for a heart that never learned how to let go. He drew a slow, unsteady breath. If my only chance at being honest means losing the two people who cared about me the most, then that's a consequence I'll have to live with. A tear escaped down his cheek. But I can't keep pretending. He looked toward the restaurant window, watching his own reflection stare back at him. I'd rather remember the ghosts of the people I've loved than spend every day wishing I were remembering them instead. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. I'd rather carry the pain of memories that are real than build a life on feelings that aren't. He turned back to Chloe. You deserve someone whose heart is completely yours. He managed a sad, apologetic smile. And I deserve to stop lying about where mine has always been. Tate reached into the inside pocket of his jacket one final time. His hand lingered there for several seconds before he slowly withdrew the large yellow envelope. He stared at it without speaking. When he finally looked at Chloe, there was nothing left in his expression except regret. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I brought the annulment paperwork with me. Chloe's eyes immediately fell to the envelope. She didn't reach for it. She couldn't. It only needs one more signature. Her lips trembled. Mine. He nodded. Yours. The word hung painfully between them. But before you look at any of it, Tate continued, there's something I need you to hear. She wiped another tear from her face and silently nodded. He leaned forward. You are the innocent victim in all of this, Chloe. She closed her eyes. No. Yes. His tone was firm. There is absolutely nothing you could have done differently. She shook her head. There has to be. There isn't. He waited until she looked back at him. I don't want you spending the next 10 years wondering whether you should have loved me more, fought harder, argued less, or noticed something sooner. His eyes filled with tears again. None of that would have changed this. He spoke each sentence slowly, making sure she heard every word. This isn't your failure. It isn't because you weren't beautiful enough. It isn't because you weren't affectionate enough. It isn't because you weren't patient enough. And it certainly isn't because you weren't enough. His voice cracked. You were more than enough. Chloe covered her face as she quietly cried. The only thing that was missing. He pressed a hand against his chest. Was inside me. A long silence settled over the table. Tate gently pushed the envelope toward her. Inside you'll find the annulment petition and everything you'll need. He hesitated. I've also included a financial agreement in the annulment paperwork. The grounds for the annulment will be concerning you entering into a marriage under false pretenses. She looked at him confused. What kind of agreement? I want you to receive $50 million every year you remain unmarried. Her eyes widened. Tate. He gently interrupted her. Please let me finish. She fell silent. The money isn't meant to buy forgiveness. He shook his head. It can't. It's there because I know this is going to change your life. He looked around the restaurant. I know there will be whispers. He gave a bitter smile. There will be gossip. He sighed. There will be people who think they know what happened. His expression softened. I want the money to remove every burden it possibly can. If you want to move somewhere else, it's yours. If you need security, it's yours. If you want to disappear for a while, it's yours. If you simply want the freedom to rebuild your life without worrying about money, it's yours. Chloe stared at him in disbelief. I don't want your money. I know. He smiled sadly. But I want you to have it anyway. He folded his hands together. You decide when the annulment becomes public. She looked up. I do. He nodded. Whenever you're ready. And however you want to explain it. He gave another small nod. If there's a version of the story that protects your dignity, tell me what it is. I'll stand by it. His expression grew more serious. As long as it doesn't falsely accuse someone else or damage my business through something untrue, I'll support whatever explanation helps you move forward. Chloe couldn't stop crying. Why are you being so kind now? Tate's eyes closed briefly. Because I wasn't kind enough while I was your husband. Another silence passed. He slid a business card from the envelope. When you've had enough time to read everything. He placed it beside the paperwork. Sign where indicated. He tapped the card gently. Fax it to this number. 3 business days after I receive it, everything will be finalized. He paused. I'll mail you certified copies once the annulment has been processed. Neither of them spoke. Finally Tate stood. For a moment, he simply looked at the woman who had loved him so completely. Then he walked around the table. Chloe looked up at him through swollen, tear-filled eyes. Without saying another word, he leaned down and gently kissed her on the cheek. I'm sorry, he whispered. His voice broke on the final word. He turned before she could answer. Slowly he walked toward the restaurant's front door. Chloe watched him disappear into the night, the unopened yellow envelope resting on the table in front of her. Only after the door closed behind him did she allow herself to break completely, burying her face in her hands as quiet sobs echoed through the space where, only moments before, she had believed her future still existed. Across town, Noah's house was unusually crowded. Every one of his closest friends had shown up after receiving his text asking if they could come over. The atmosphere was quiet, nobody was laughing. Half-finished cups of coffee sat untouched on the living room table as everyone waited for Noah to explain what had happened. He took a deep breath. So, everyone looked at him. I finally told Tate. The room fell completely silent. I told him I was gay. Mark leaned forward. And Noah managed a weak smile. He already knew. Several people exchanged surprised glances. Andrew raised an eyebrow. He knew. Noah nodded. He figured it out before I ever said anything. Jack folded his arms. So how did he take it? Noah hesitated. We fought. Everyone looked concerned. It got pretty ugly for a while. Bree frowned. Did he say anything awful? No. Noah shook his head. Not really. He was shocked, I was emotional, we both said things we probably shouldn't have. Andrew sighed with relief. So what happened? We talked. Noah looked toward the floor. We finally understood each other. Mark smiled faintly. So you reconciled? Yeah. We reconciled. Susie smiled warmly. I'm really glad to hear that. Anna nodded. You've been carrying that around for years. I have. Jack leaned back against the couch. So, are things okay between you two now? Noah gave a small nod. They're okay. Mark studied Noah for a moment. You don't sound okay. Noah forced another smile. I'm just exhausted. Nobody spoke. After a few seconds, Bree quietly asked. Did telling him make you feel better? Noah thought for a long moment. In some ways. Andrew tilted his head. In some ways. Noah shrugged. It feels good not to be hiding anymore. But... Noah looked away. It's complicated. Mark could tell Noah wasn't telling them everything, but he chose not to push. Instead, he stood up and walked over, placing a hand on Noah's shoulder. I'm proud of you. Noah looked up. For what? For finally telling the truth. Andrew nodded in agreement. That took courage. Jack smiled. More courage than I think I would have had. Bree crossed the room and hugged Noah. You don't have to carry everything by yourself anymore. Susie smiled gently. We're all here. Anna reached over and squeezed Noah's hand. No matter what happens next. Noah looked around the room at the people who had become his family. Thank you. He meant it. No one in the room mentioned that Tate had rejected any possibility of a relationship between them. Whether they sensed Noah wasn't ready to talk about it or simply chose to focus on the reconciliation instead, they let that part remain unspoken. For tonight, it was enough that Noah had finally stopped hiding. And for the first time in a very long time, he wasn't carrying the truth alone. Noah looked around the room at the faces of his closest friends and managed a small, tired smile. So Tate knows now. The room fell silent. He knows about my romantic feelings for him. Mark nodded slowly. And... Noah shrugged. I told him something I've been trying to convince myself of for the last 2 years. Everyone listened. When Tate married Chloe, I forced myself to let those feelings go. He smiled faintly. I had to. He glanced toward the floor. I've been with Riley and Riley has been good for me. I wasn't going to spend my life waiting for someone who was never available. Andrew folded his arms. So this finally gave you closure. Noah nodded. I think it did. He took a deep breath. It confirmed what I've always known. The smile on his face became bittersweet. Tate has never been in love with me. He paused. And he never will. No one interrupted him. So, we're just going to be what we've always been. He laughed softly. Childhood buddies. Jack smiled. That's not the worst outcome. No. Noah nodded. It isn't. I'm putting all of this behind me. He spread his hands. No more wondering. No more what-ifs. No more shenanigans. Bree smiled. Probably healthier. I think so. Susie tilted her head. So there was never really a love triangle. Noah chuckled. No. He shook his head. There never was. Tate loves Chloe. His voice remained steady. And I've just got to learn to live with that. Anna smiled sympathetically. You've always wanted him to be happy. Noah nodded without hesitation. That's never changed. As long as Tate's happy. He smiled. That's all I've ever cared about. Mark watched Noah for a few moments before speaking. You're a terrible liar. The room grew quiet. Noah blinked. What do you mean, what of it?